Hey, welcome. This is Cam for another episode of the Quarantine Series, and I'm with a great friend, leader and mentor, Kathy Higgins, for the CEO of the Alliance for a Healthier Generation. Welcome, Kathy, and tell us a little bit about the Alliance, the work you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. It's great to see you. I think the last time we talked was around Thanksgiving. We had a walk and talk together.
Yeah.
And little did we know what we were about to face in the new year, right?
That's right.
So Alliance for a Healthier Generation, it's an organization that has existed for 15 years, initially focused on childhood obesity prevention, and did that very successfully, grew in that capacity with great leadership from the Heart Association, from the support of Clinton Foundation, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, CDC, and really the public health leading organizations that invested in the Alliance. The neat thing is that it grew over time to include really this social emotional health and well-being and the whole child approach. And so we're in 49,000 schools or out of school time programs across the country, and doing this work to support systems change, to create environments and conditions that help the whole child and those that care for the child.
Well, and as you say that, we need to connect you wider across the Y movement, and especially the light bulb went on for me. Now school's different. You know, we're getting ready to serve all these kids half on, half off as we manage this pandemic and the new school day. And so using your resources would be great to implement into our program.
Yeah.
Because it's fitting our mission. So
would love to do that. You know, one of the skills that we bring to the table is this, you know, training and professional development and technical assistance. And because, you know, folks like on the ground, like at the Y, you know, they know what they want to accomplish with the children, but a lot of times they just need the support to figure out how to process through and how to create environments that are best for interacting with their programmatic work as well as delivering it to the kids that need it. So yeah, but happy to help anytime.
Yeah, let's keep talking. Let's keep doing that. Our relationship started really when you were with Blue Cross of North Carolina, and we got to know each other there. So tell us, what changes do you see in philanthropy, if any, because of the pandemic?
Right. Well, you know, after 30 years of being a funder and then transitioning to a fundraiser, I have learned a lot in the last year and a half. I do think funding organizations, foundations, and even corporations that care about social responsibility and investment in community have taken probably a fresh look at how they allocate their resources and their dollars. And so I think COVID has enlightened a lot of funding organizations to think about how they can invest their dollars differently. I do think foundations have become more mindful of the need for nonprofits to have a certain level of capacity, resources, and supportive operations. You know, an old adage that used to be about foundations didn't want to fund personnel or overhead or operating costs. And when, you know, I think the light bulb has finally gone off to recognize, well, then how are organizations, whether it's a Y, whether it's Healthier Generation, how can we deliver the work that we're doing to make our communities better, stronger, more viable without having our operations supported? And so, so I think there's more, what I would say, maybe more flexibility, which is welcomed by the nonprofit community.
The social unrest also in our country, do you see funding strategies changing because of that yet?
Oh, I definitely do, and that's, you know, and thank goodness, you know. I think this support around justice and equity and diversity and inclusion. I think a lot of funding organizations have taken on in a more serious way. Not only what goals are they seeking to achieve in terms of their investment or funding strategy, but how do they do that with an equity lens is what is often said these days. And how are they seeking organizations that are committed to delivering their work in an equity framework? And so, and they have a lot of, I think they're looking internally as well, like what is the equity lens that they provide internally in their organization? What equity lens do they have on their, with their board makeup? And so while they're thinking about those things internally, they're also thinking about who are they investing in that is at a minimum demonstrating that they're on this journey. And I'll also pause there from a philanthropy standpoint. It's another area where the nonprofit community needs this financial support of the funding community in order to advance our work in the equity journey. I will just share that in my old world, when we wanted to do things, we just figured it out and we hired people to help us. Resources weren't unlimited, but they weren't so scarce that you just couldn't create an environment to grow and learn and improve. Well, in the nonprofit community, we just can't grow those resources in order to take on a certain level of growth and development, in this case, in the equity arena. We were fortunate that Robert Wood Johnson actually recently, this past year, selected us as one of 4 organizations to invest in. And we have some of the greatest consultants in the country helping us now with this work. And we use the word journey when we talk about equity, because I think that's the commitment. It's not the check in the box. It's not a destination, but it's right. How do we grow and improve? And there's so many things to learn. So.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Great stuff. You're such a dynamic leader and a role model of female that sits in the C-suite and have been in big circles with important people around our state and country. What advice would you give, not just young female leaders, but all female leaders who maybe aspire to be an executive or sit someday in the C-suite?
Sure. Well, a couple things. I'll go with no particular order, but top of mind was, because I've stated this before, and that is, don't hesitate to learn how to play the game of golf. Not that I encourage everyone to do that, but I do. I've talked before about, the green is the boardroom, outside of the 4 walls. And I certainly think that golf has been something that has allowed me to have access in a way that maybe most people in my 30-year career, most women were not having access. So that's, I say that seriously, as well as just in a way that that's a personal thing for anyone to consider. The other thing I think is just incredibly important is willingness to have honest conversations with people of power and influence that can support your growth and development, which includes seeking out, honest feedback on areas that you can, where you can grow, and being willing to speak to areas of strength that you believe that you have, that you believe bring value to the business. I think that's one of the greatest ways of being recognized, is thinking about how you can support and achieve the goals of the organization in an effective way, and and have a level of confidence to be in those conversations so that you're on a variety of people's radar screens. We've talked about the whole, the coaching, the mentoring, and the sponsorship. And I think people have learned, certainly in the last few years, about the value of sponsorship as a, can you identify people that will really speak up on your behalf? And I think the short definition is put their reputation on the line so that they can advocate for you. And when you think about it, like, people can't do that for tens or hundreds of people. They have to, that's a short list.
Right.
So identifying who will be a champion with you, I think is really important.
That's good stuff. So flip it a little bit. Me, the dinosaur, the white male CEO, how do I become a better advocate for the women in our workforce or in my movement?
Yeah. Well, I'm certain you're not any of those things, but you certainly are. You're naturally a gifted leader, and I think, Cam, especially because of your kindness, your level of commitment, and I think you approach your life with a level of empathy that is really noticeable. And beyond that, you're just fortunate to have the DNA of likability. So, I remember the first time meeting you, it just, it was, here's the first time I met you, I was disappointed in myself.
Could you write that letter to my mother?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And your spouse and your,
my daughter.
So here are the things that you can do. And one is, continue to raise your awareness. Again, I think you tend to be in a category of that seemingly being naturally aware, but how do you push the envelope of creating a greater awareness of the females in your organization, let's say, that really do want to grow? And then how are you providing time for them to hear about their hopes, their wishes, their dreams? And how are you willing to give them candid feedback and guidance, and actually even support them in being, help them be an architect of their career? And what I found is that often what we have to do is separate the work, because the work, people have to commit to their jobs, perform in their jobs, produce in their jobs, excel in their jobs. But there's a whole nother layer outside of that is about developing who they are from a career standpoint, and what aspirations they might have for being a people leader, rising into absolute leadership in terms of, like you mentioned, C-suite, to where you're really stepping over a threshold of not being a doer per se, but being a leader, someone who is the wind behind the back of the employees.
Great word.
It's a big difference. There's a real difference in that. So even supporting people through those transition years, when the person gets promoted to a vice president title and they're so used to always doing the work, how are they being coached on not demanding of their employees to do it their way, but I'd like to suggest always switching over to asking more questions, so that people are, those that they're managing or leading are now becoming the doers, because it's their thoughts, their ideas leading the way, and then the executive is there to create enthusiasm and optimism, and often to break down barriers so that people can be successful.
So for the males that are listening to this and watching, it's much safer in today's environment for me to go to lunch with the guys, play golf with the guys, grab coffee, beer after work with the guys. Coach us through that, because if we only do that, we're excluding, half my workforce or whatever,
Right.
the
Right.
women. So coach us through that a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's, that lends itself into sort of this world of the equity discussion, right? And it's not so much about like, then do you have to take the females and whatever you just listed, to lunch, to, to play golf, to do the following things, but what is it that they need and how are their needs being supported? I think it comes back to the whole, are we asking more questions as leaders, rather than just deciding what people might want, and then because that's what you might want, and then imposing that on them. So it could be that, and by the way, it could even be that the guys that are going to lunch or going to play golf, maybe they don't even want to do that, but they feel obligated because the boss person
lose to me.
Yeah, right. I wish he would just take, Susie down the hall. It's not me. It is, access is important, and how we are enlightened as leaders to make sure that what is fair and equitable throughout our organization, for people to have access, to have growth, to have opportunities to pursue their dreams. And so I think raising awareness, asking questions, and being in conversation. I mean, that at the end of the day, boy, if I've learned anything over the years, it's like the more we're willing to talk to one another, build trust with one another, and have this exchange of ideas and what would be recognized as a safe environment. Because if I can share my ideas with you, and I know that you will, it's in a level of confidence that you would also be willing to give me feedback or give me your ideas or your perspective, that's a chance to grow. And so I think, and we're all working on how do we communicate better. And I think we're all working on how to address difficult situations, difficult conversations, I said recently to someone, like, I don't know anyone who loves conflict, or who feels like, wow, I can't wait to deal with that conflict. But I think we all know if we lean in and willing to start a conversation, people have coined that, right? A courageous conversation, that the outcomes are always better than just keeping it, internalizing concerns. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, I appreciate your time and your advice, and really for the people listening, the advice and guidance on the journey, that we're taking as leaders to be better leaders as it relates to all the people in our organization, and ultimately, take our YMCAs or whatever organization you're leading on this journey just to be better and serve our communities better and be more mission driven and focused. Kathy, thanks so much for your dynamic leadership, and I hope we get to play golf very soon too.
I'd love that, Cam. We've been talking about it forever, so maybe someday. Thank you.
Let's get it there. Thank you. All right.